Hi, I'm Jeremy and welcome to our farm, Cornucopia Orchards. Today we're getting started on some painting, and with a new thing for me, I have my college aged, so gosh, well, I'm 38, so you figure out how many years ago that was. 15? Probably 15. I think I graduated 1 year later than most, so 15. It's a 15, 16, 17-year-old shirt I'm wearing here, which is perfect for painting. And we're trying out something new. So we have a Graco Magnum Pro X17, and I'm just getting ready to get started. Our paint is water-based. I think it's an acrylic enamel. These Gracos come basically designed to be, kind of ready for this process. So they are very detailed as to what you do to store it properly, which I think is nice because my prior experience with any kind of paint system has been with family, and they've always complained about how they just stop working over time. In fairness, that very well could be the fact that we suck at maintenance. What I really like about this is that I do not have a huge space to be able to get all this painted. And so I've made these Sawhorses here and got this all set up, and they're nice and sturdy, and it's going to work great. But I set this up, and I can spray those and then add on the wings and then spray those. That's as far in as I could reach and maintain a good angle on these boards. The paint calls for an hour of dry time, and that means that there's going to be multiple coats that I can do today. So these are primed on 3 sides, and the sprayer works best at a perpendicular. So I don't know how good a job it's going to do trying to hit these in between, but I'm going to space these out probably about like this all the way through as best I can. Then hopefully that gets the sides as I go. If it doesn't, I'll have to come back and probably hand paint all of those. So we'll find that out together. This will be real exciting because I'm essentially just going to read this. This is my first time doing this. So we've got the main hose in the nice clean bucket here. That's going to suck water from there, run it through to the pump into here, into the waste. And I've already got everything kind of set up, so we're plugged in, but we're off. Power's on this side here. The pressure turned way down. We're going to turn that to the prime button. We're going to press prime twice to start, which is kind of right in the middle of the pressure. Turn the power switch on. Okay, turned off. It does specifically say that you should be straining this, but I don't have anything to really strain it. It is a pretty new can, so we'll see how that goes. That is a white paint indeed. That will help us out when everything is said and done. There we go. Turn it back on. Set to unclog, which is that way. Disengage the trigger lock. Always keeping the trigger lock on these off when you're spraying, but otherwise on at all times. I guess in theory that means we're ready. Now, the can specifically said about 2,000, I think. So we're going to try that. So I've got a pretty big wingspan, so that makes some of this easy. I can reach the 4 feet between these two 24-inch wide boards behind me here. And it's soffit material we're gonna have to rip down, so the edges are gonna get painted a second time anyway. So I'm trying to get them where I can, and I'm not worried about where I don't. I think by now I've said this in like 5 videos, but supposedly we're finally getting the last of the siding. It was supposed to have arrived yesterday, and I haven't heard from my supplier if they are there. I've tried to work with a swath of lumber yards and big box stores, and this is the best one that I found in the local area. I'll name drop the others. Home Depot is like, we're order takers. We're not going to help you track stuff down. That's your job. And I was like, I don't need that. It's not a thing. And they also weren't interested really in my business from the standpoint of being competitive against the others. with their bid room. They're like, this is what we got. We're not gonna, put in your information and try and get you a better deal. So I moved on from them, and maybe that's just that store. Maybe you've had better luck, but that was my experience here in the Valley at the store that I went to. We have, Builders First Source here, and I tried to get them to work with me, and they would not return calls. I went in, they never got back to me, and I'm just not going to deal with that either. And then Par, another local lumber yard, they at least got back to me once, but never after that with anything. And I did try and follow up a couple times. So, and there's a lot going on when all of this started out, but oh, and then there's another one. We actually did the roof metal, as you know, and then our shop was out of a local lumber yard that overall has been pretty good. This last time they botched pretty bad on the metal roof. The order was not the way it should have been. And it's just incredible to me. Either it's I have really, really bad luck, or maybe this is something that other builders who are bigger builders who are real boys with actual companies that do this for other people. Maybe it's just developing a rapport with one of those places that gets you the service that you should have from the beginning. But I'm not going to work with a company that treats any customer that way. I just don't feel that's right. So the local store that I go to with Lowe's has always been really good to me. And I know that when all is said and done with this siding project, they're going to take care of everything that's happened to us, and they're going to take that into consideration. And I appreciate that. Morning. So I'm gonna get this guy here up against the top. Just got the paint done on the cut side and the part where it's budding, so it should be 100%. The other side, I did get pretty good paint on the spray stage. Spraying from the top, even with that gap I was leaving, not the easiest to get it down the sides very well. And hopefully this is calibrated roughly correctly, but we're going to get this put up here. And then I have 2 shims for 3/16. So we're going to go ahead and make sure that we're 3/16 on the side here off the window, and that's what this is cut at. So let's see here. One up there near the top, one down here near the bottom. Okay, that definitely needs more. That's about right. Try not to hook this outside because I just painted it, but this is going to need to come in just a hair here in the middle. Okay. I'm using 2.5 inch nails for here. We have a 7/16 sheathing here. We have a almost 1 inch trim board, and the depth that I want to penetrate into the studs behind is 1 inch. So that makes sense. And we should be hitting the stack of doubled up 2x material here on a size of nail that I'm using. These are 0.12s. You can go all the way down to a 0.93, I think, on these pieces. So I'm just going to be hitting them, each of these trim boards, with just a couple of these larger size nails, and then I'll come back and I'll touch up the paint wherever they're, nailed in there. Okay, so on these trim boards, installation instructions are saying that we need to be hitting every 24 inches max on these vertical trims. 3/8 inch minimum. That's probably a little bit too far out. That's probably a little bit too far in. However, there is a flange there, so I was trying not to get too close to this window and cause a problem in that direction. And the ends are supposed to have 2. So I'm going to leave this board since I centered those, and these are larger than the 0.93s required. I think that should be fine. However, I am going to make sure that the rest of them do get the 2 on the ends. They want to be flushed or slightly proud. So these are all just right flushed to the board. And we have that nice 3/16 gap. It's a little bit more in some places and a little bit less in others, but that looks about perfect. We're butted tight to the top, and I did tuck this up. You can see that strip there. And what that's going to do is you have the flange and then you have this material. And so I don't need to shim the backs of these boards on the outside so that they don't buckle the wrong way and look a little bit funny, because I have this, it's basically the same, even compressed, I think it's going to end up being about the same as having a shim back there to keep these from buckling on the side. All right, so we're going to go ahead. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and try and get this filled with our bead of caulk. So just trying to get the right amount on there, and if it's a 3/16 inch, then cut your tip of your caulk gun or of your caulk tube carefully and put it at not a 45, not a flat, but something like a 22.5 or 30 or 35, something like that, of an angle coming into it. And it should fill that gap if you're coming right down, and put a little bit more onto the window sill, or not sill, I guess, what would you call that? The outer edge of the window, and just a nice, angle to it. That should make smoothing this out very easy. Just a really light touch. If you don't have too much, then it's not going to smear. Should just smooth really nice and disappear. So got a bunch of cuts to do that I need to get for around these windows, and then we'll do around the doors. I'll introduce you guys to a little friend I've made. Probably can't see her. She's right there. She is hanging out. There's a reason for it. She's decided to make a nest right up in here. And, I'm inclined to let her. It shouldn't be too long after a nest is made that she has babies, a month or so. And then another month for them to get big enough to get out of the house. So I think we'll just leave her. For all of the trims that butt up against that band board, I am basically not pre-assembling them. I do plan on, for like the porch side, I'm gonna put those together pre-assembled with pocket screws. But for these, because it would only be 3 of the 4 sides, I don't really see the value of that. And so I'm just basically cutting those on the ground. I'll get the measures, I'll cut them on the ground, make sure I've got my space. And then I have to paint the sides on each of them, because the spray did a pretty good job on the face, but it definitely didn't get the sides unless it was the outside board. Not consistent for sure. I've just brought some boards inside here. I've got my paint can, nothing fancy. I'm not bothering with horses or anything like that. Just holding them one at a time, and then I just stand them up like this when they're done with the paint. And I kind of do a batch of these, and then set them out to dry. And once they're dried, by that time I've gotten some more cut and some more planned or done something else, then I'll come back and I'll grab these and I'll get them installed. So we're making pretty good progress. This side minus the corners is pretty much done. I have one more board right there, and then obviously paint on the boards that I installed before as well to go. I did run out of my big stretch caulk, so a lot of these aren't caulked yet, and I think they're coming out pretty well. So here's one that looks, completely finished. Trying to get it to where I'm packing the caulk in and it's coming out at a triangle. And, then as the caulk dries a little bit, it's not going to kind of inset in without, this is a spot that maybe has just a little bit too much but in general, they're coming out really nice, and I like that. I am caulking the nails as I go. I find that I have some, on my fingers, and so why not use that? And it seems to turn out better when I paint them at the end, if I've at least smoothed around any of the nails. And I think it's just because the paint has a hard time with some of these depressions. Let me show you. So without caulk around these, I was having a hard time getting the paint to really get in there and stay on these nails. So might as well just hit them with caulk off the end of the job. Each time I make one of these vertical runs, I have some left on my finger and I'm just filling these holes. One thing you'll notice is that there is something behind here. So I'm not doing the air and water blue material. Let me show you that again. There it is out here. I have a 1 foot overhang on this whole section. So I might do this or I might leave it. I'll probably just leave that one section there. I don't think that's a big deal. But on the other exposures, even down low, I am running some vertical strips of this material, and then that will, give it room to drain and to breathe whatever water gets behind the siding. But I'm not doing that in here, and that means that I need something to hold this at a flat coming out from the window. And I happen to have ripped 3.5 inch boards down by a little bit more than 1/8. And the saw blade is 1/8. And what that meant was that I had these long strips that were just perfect for this window here. So on both of the outsides of this set, I just stuck those in there behind, and it did a nice job making sure that the trim came together at the tops well and at the bottoms as well. On this one, I'm just using shims and then buzzing them off, and you can see one right there. And I'm just, using an oscillating multi-tool to afterwards to take it out. So nothing too complicated. This is how I'm treating this door. Essentially it's a shared window and door trim going up. And then on the bottom, you've got your window trim coming in. That needs its caulk line. And that's pretty much it. So here's the door on this side, just a little bit up close. And it's got that inset cut that I need to tape and then paint. And then I did leave these ones with enough room for expansion joint for caulk instead of butting them like I am on the windows. Not hard tight, but as the instructions on the installation for LP says, butting them snug up against each other, I think is something like that is what they say. So they're going to take a caulk line on these, and I think that that's, not a bad idea. On the bottom, I am 3/8 off of the tray, and I'm just following, no more than 24 inches for the spacing. I think I split these evenly, and I did the same over here. So on the windows, you'll notice it's like 18 inches. Well, these are 6 foot tall windows, and so if you cut it in half and then cut it in half again, that's what you ended up with. So as far as the reveal, I'm pretty happy with this. Once you get a caulk line into that space, it's going to be about what you would expect. And I didn't want to lose how beautiful the wood is transitioning off of the paint. And so I made the initial spacing, 3/8 or a touch more around this door. The thing I will say about this is that we may eventually take a little addition of roof just out for this particular door, maybe a 4 foot wide, 4 foot out, or to the end of the deck out here. So 5 or 6 feet, just to help give some shelter for this door, because they aren't supposed to be long-term exposed, and that 1 foot overhang ain't enough. So on these corners that I don't have yet, but they're supposed to be arriving, I really, really hope that dimensionally what they say is what they are. And, I really emphasize that to my lumber yard, to my salesman. So I'm crossing my fingers on that, because I've done so much work to get everything set up and correctly spaced, and I really don't want to have to spend a lot of time doing variable rips or X, Y, or Z on these to try and make everything fit in. So hopefully they just come ready to rock and roll, and I just have to assemble them and we move on. I did decide on the sides where, you know, you're down low and we've got our lap siding going crossways. I did decide to go ahead and do the same treatment with these. I think I'll have almost enough. I might have to buy one more roll, but in the end, I think, you know, it's worth it, and it does the job of shimming around these windows very nicely, and I like that as well. And so I think that's pretty valuable. One thing I do have to get done before we move on is I got to get the Z-flash on here, and so I'm not buttoning at the bottom. You know, you can see a couple of those are kind of standing out. I'm not buttoning it in real tight because I got to get the Z-flash and then the back tape on this whole section done. But this will let me get the window trim done on, you know, that section as well. Trying to get the first floor completed, and, you know, then that way we can really move on once the corners are here and we're in a place on the roof where we're ready for that. But in the meantime, this is what I can do, so it's what I'm doing. But any spots on the sides where it had been primed and painted, sometimes they're pretty thin. And even though there's prime there, I still want to make sure that I, you know, really get this nicely sealed. I would rather spend a little bit of extra on if I have to buy a little bit more paint and have that nice. You know, doing this as an exterior paint partially indoors. I mean, the windows and the doors are open, but that hasn't bothered me, and I've been pretty sensitive in the past to that. Once I've got that, I just, you know, set it up over here, lean it on its side, and lay it flat. And then some of the spots, it was really hard. It was really hard for me to see when I was spraying, because I was going these big batches at a time and the white was just so blinding. And so some of these are a little spotty. So I'll show you this, and you probably can't tell, but I can. So there's some spottiness right through here on this board, and right through here some speckling. And so when I'm doing these boards, once I've set them up, I'll go back through and try and correct for any of that as well.
Thanks for watching.
Subscribe for more.
And see you next time.